Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Fiscal Year 2024 Faculty Research Abroad, or FRA, Technical Assistance webinar. My name is Amy Marion, and I'm a Program Officer for the FRA program, and I will be presenting today's Technical Assistance webinar, which will be posted on YouTube and can be watched at any time, and you can pause and refer to this recording. I also want to note that in the description of this recording on YouTube, we also have a link to our website and several of the resources that we will mention throughout the slideshow. So I'm going to turn off my camera for the duration of the webinar. I hope that you'll find this informative, and if you have any questions, please be sure to contact FRA@ed.gov. We'll be happy to help you out, and we will talk more about also project directors on your campuses and how you could also reach out to them for support. So thanks again for your interest in the program, and let's begin. Okay, so to begin, we have some topics for today's webinar. First, we'll do an overview of the Faculty Research Abroad program. We'll talk about eligibility requirements and who is eligible to apply. We'll talk about the funding that you receive as an FRA Fellow. We'll also go through the process of applying to the program. Applications are currently open. They opened on February 23rd, 2024, and they will close on April 23rd, 2024. We'll also talk about the review process and how applicants can ensure that they are addressing all of the criteria for the program. We'll talk briefly about the FRA Experience and reflect on some of our previous FRA Fellows and their time abroad. And lastly, we'll also provide some helpful tips and tricks for applicants. Okay, so we'll be going through quite a bit of content today, but I did want to provide some fast facts and helpful resources to get us started. So to reiterate, the competition opened on February 23rd, 2024, and it closes on April 23rd, 2024, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Applications must be submitted in G5 by the project director at your institution by April 23rd. Applications include two components: an institutional application and a fellow application. If you are a fellow, you are unable to apply without the institutional application. So keep that in mind. You have to connect with your institutional project director, which we'll talk more about throughout this presentation. Also, be sure to see application instructions, which are on the FRA applicant webpage for in-depth information about the application process. This is a Word document, which is on the applicant webpage, and I believe it's about 65 pages, and it provides guidance for the entire application. So be sure to look at that. Whether you pull it up now or after the webinar, it's a really great guide to the application process. Again, be sure to reach out to your institutional FRA project director, or PD, as we may refer to them throughout the presentation, with questions, and PDs may reach out to FRA@ed.gov with further questions. All awards for this year's competition will be issued by September 30th, 2024, and the FRA travel time period is January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025, and there are no exceptions. Okay, so we will start with an overview of the program and the pre-award process. But first, we want to provide a little bit of history about the Fulbright-Hays and the administration of the FRA program. So the FRA was established in 1961 under the Fulbright-Hays Act of 1961, which is officially known as the Mutual Educational and Cultural Exchange Act of 1961. It was marshaled by the United States Senator J. William Fulbright and enacted by the 87th United States Congress on September 21st, 1961. The same month, the Foreign Assistance Act of 1961 and Peace Corps Act of 1961 were enacted. Currently, we have 4 Fulbright-Hays programs. In addition to the faculty research abroad, we also have the group projects abroad, the seminars abroad, and the doctoral dissertation research abroad program. Final approval of award recommendations are given by the Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board. So for administering this program, to help accomplish the objective, the Faculty Research Abroad program provides opportunities for scholars to conduct research overseas for 3 to 12 months in the field of modern foreign language and area studies. The FRA is administered by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Post-Secondary Education, and the International and Foreign Language Education Office, also known as IFLE, which is where I work. The IFLE team currently administers all 4 Fulbright-Hays programs and looks forward to supporting you through the application and fellow experience. And some of you may already be aware of this, but the FRA program was actually unavailable since about 2011, and it came back in 2022, and we had a competition, and we had a handful of grantees, and we had a pause last year in 2023, so we are really thrilled to be offering this competition again in 2024. Okay, so what exactly is the Faculty Research Abroad program? The FRA provides grants to institutions of higher education to fund faculty to maintain and improve their area studies and language skills by conducting research abroad for periods of 3 to 12 months. Please note that proposals focusing solely on Western Europe are not eligible. This means that proposals for a project solely based in Western Europe and only focused on Western European topics are not allowable. However, travel to Western Europe is permitted for projects that entail non-Western European topics. For example, a fellow may begin their research in Morocco for 3 months and then spend 2 months in France looking at archival materials related to their project focusing on a topic in Morocco or Northern Africa. Questions about project eligibility should first be discussed with the FRA project director and then shared with FRA at ed.gov if you have further questions. Okay, so just to reiterate what I just mentioned, the Faculty Research Abroad program has one absolute priority, and that is on the screen, and we only consider applications that meet this priority. So this is under specific geographic regions of the world. Again, a research project that focuses on one or more of the following geographic areas: Africa, East Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Islands, South Asia, the Near East, Central and Eastern Europe, and Eurasia, and the Western Hemisphere, excluding the United States and its territories. So we wanted to provide a definition of area studies because that is part of the program. So we define area studies as an interdisciplinary program of comprehensive study of the aspects of a society or societies, including the study of their geography, history, culture, economy, politics, education, international relations, and language. So as you can see, it is very broadly defined, and this does result in us having projects from many different disciplines. Fiscal year 2024 FRA funds and awards. So this year, our estimated available funds are $750,000. The estimated range of awards for fellows is $25,000 to $40,000. The estimated average size of awards will be about $30,000, and the estimated number of awards total we anticipate is 25. And please note that we are not bound by any estimates in this notice. Okay, so who can apply to the FRA? There are two eligible entities for the FRA. There are institutions of higher education, which might be referred to as IHEs in the presentation, and also faculty members at those institutions of higher education. So all institutions of higher education must have an appointed project director or PD in place to submit an FRA application. FRA project directors serve as the main point of contact for all applicants on their campuses and are the main point of contact between their school and the Department of Education. We'll have more to come on the roles and responsibilities. Please email FRA at ed.gov if you need to appoint a PD or you don't know who the PD is on your campus or you need to update the PD. Also keep in mind that the institution of higher education must be based in the United States, and the project period is 18 months. So this is the time from receiving the funds to completing the final reports and sending back any excess funds if applicable. And I also want to note that it is possible to have more than one applicant at an institution. You'll still just have the one project director. You could have 3 FRA applicants, and all 3 of those FRA applicants would work with the project director, and that project director would submit one application for the institution, which includes 3 individual applications for the faculty fellows. Okay, so faculty eligibility. So anyone applying for the FRA must be a U.S. citizen, national, or permanent resident employed by U.S. institution of higher education. They have to be engaged in teaching relevant to their foreign language or area study specialization for 2 years immediately preceding the award date. They must propose research relevant to their modern foreign language or area study specialization. They must possess sufficient foreign language skills to carry out the research project, and they must have a research period between the minimum of 3 months to the maximum of 12 months, and these must be consecutive months. So the FRA requires you, if you're doing 6 months, you have to do from January to June. You can't go January to March and then go back in August for 3 more months. It has to be all together. And please note that FRA grants cannot be deferred to subsequent academic years. Okay, so we mentioned the eligibility, and this is how the Department of Education will screen applicants when we receive the applications. So we screen all applications for technical eligibility in accordance with the evaluation criteria published in the notice inviting applications and the program-specific regulations of 34 CFR Part 663. So the U.S. institution eligibility, they must have a registered project director, and they must have a registered unique entity number, a UEI, and a taxpayer identification number, or a TIN. To reiterate, faculty eligibility must have U.S. citizenship, which we went into further detail in the previous slide. They must be employed by the applicant IHE. They have to have taught 2 years prior at that IHE, and they cannot have multiple federal grants awards for the same types of things in the same fiscal year, and they cannot have defaulted on any federal student loans. And just to go into a little more detail about Part D under faculty eligibility, faculty are not eligible to receive other federal research grants, such as the IIE Fulbright, in the same fiscal year that they receive the FRA fellowship. We would be happy to answer any questions about that. Okay, so applicant roles and responsibilities. We've got the institution, so primarily the project director, we have the faculty applicant, and we also have institutional references. So the institution, they must attend the technical assistance webinar, which is what we're presenting right now. They must appoint a project director, and that project director must register in G5. G5 is the application system that the Department of Education uses to manage all applications for the Fulbright-Hays. The institution must make the fellowship application materials available to the faculty. They must accept and screen applications in accordance with its own technical and academic criteria. They must include faculty applications with the institutional application. So as I mentioned before, there is an application for the institution, and there's also applications for the individual fellows. And the institution or the project director also administers the grant and disbursement of funds. So the FRA funds, if you are a successful applicant and you receive the award, your institution will receive the funds, and then your institution will disperse those funds to you. If you are a successful FRA grantee, you will receive more information at the time. There are several processes involved in receiving your funds for travel. You have to have travel approval and several other things, but your institution will be charged with that. So for the faculty, the roles and responsibilities, you must contact the project director for institutional information. The faculty must also register in G5, the application system. They must initiate emails to solicit references well in advance when they are completing their application. They must submit their complete application in G5. They must submit the Institutional Review Board or IRB narrative to project director for upload in G5. And they must also follow up with the project director. The institutional references, so they will receive your reference forms from the faculty applicant. They will complete them and submit them and send a copy of the form to the project director. Okay, so we've gone over what the FRA provides, what is the program, and we've also talked a little bit about the eligibility to apply. So now I want to go through the financial and budget information and what sorts of things you can include in your budget. So these are some of the allowable budget expenses for an FRA grant. So FRA funds may include expenses such as international economy travel and baggage, maintenance allowance related to your salary, which we'll talk more about in just a little bit, books, research materials, technology directly related to the proposed research like flash drives or scanners, travel within your host country or countries, and affiliation fees. Now, there are several budget exclusions that we also want to point out. So research or related project activities conducted in the United States are not allowable expenses, so you would have to find other funding for that. Reimbursement for travel not approved by the U.S. Department of Education. So we do have an approval process when you receive your grant. Prior to traveling, you must complete a grant activation request, which is submitted by your project director. If the grant activation request is not approved, you cannot use your funding. And if you do somehow use your funding, you would not be reimbursed for that. Any allowances for dependents or travel for dependents, travel and expenses not directly related to the project, all expenditures due to changes in the itinerary and/or grant agreement, passport, visa, photo, or any identifying documents for clearance. The Department of Education cannot cover any sort of expenses related to visas, passports. Those are all on your own or maybe through another grant. Pre-award travel to obtain visas or research permissions, also not allowable expenses. Physical examinations, immunizations, or other medical expenses not allowable. Obligations not incurred within the grant period. And please note that the grant is not transferable. Okay, so we wanted to provide a sample budget calculation to hopefully help with your budget for your application. Please keep in mind that the G5 application system will help do these calculations for you. So we have the spreadsheet up here, but you will be plugging these into the G5 application system, so don't worry too much. But this sample calculation I have on the screen is for a 6-month fellowship to Armenia. When we did the calculation, the total award was $39,312. So let's break that down. So first we have the round trip airfare. So the round trip airfare from Los Angeles to Armenia back to Los Angeles was about $1,500. And then we have the maintenance allowance part 1. So this is where you have to do a little bit of math, or G5 will help you with the math. So you would take your academic year salary, which in this case is $70,000, and we have the academic year is 9 months long. So you're going to take $70,000, your academic year salary, and divide it by 9. And then you're going to get, in this calculation, $7,777. Then we go to maintenance allowance part 2, and we have the $7,777, and we times that by 6 months because the FRA fellowship is 6 months. That brings us to $46,662. The next line is the institution of higher education duplicating support. So in this example, there was $10,000 sabbatical pay that the institution provided. This might be different for other applicants, but this is just part of our example. So because they received sabbatical pay, we subtracted $10,000 from the total amount that they'll receive. And then we have the project allowance on the next line. So this is covering daily transport in Armenia, some office supplies, and also an affiliation fee, which totaled $1,050. And then the last line is the administration fee. So this is a fee that goes to the institution of higher education. It's $100 per fellow. And so this helps support the administration of the FRA on your campus. So the total FRA award for this fellow for 6 months in Armenia is $39,312. Again, G5 will help you with the calculation, but we did want to provide a little bit of an example for you to reference. And please be sure when you are listing your project allowance that you are entering each item in your project so we know what the breakdown is. Okay, so now let's get into how you submit your FRA application. Remember, there's an institutional application and an application for the faculty applicant. They're all submitted together. Okay, so I've mentioned G5 a couple times. I do want to note that G5 is in the middle of a transition. You might end up at G6, which is the new version. However, when you log in, you will likely end up back at G5. And I just want to note that that is totally fine. Don't be alarmed if you're looking at something that says G6 and then it says G5 or vice versa. You should be at the right place. So faculty submit individual applications to the project director using the G5 application system. There are 7 required documents that the faculty must submit in G5. And the Faculty Research Abroad application form is an electronic form, and it's titled as item number 22. The remaining documents must be uploaded and saved as PDFs, and the PDFs must be unlocked and unprotected for G5 to accept the submission. Just keep that in mind. Language and institutional references submit forms to project directors using G5. References using servers overseas might not be able to submit the forms in G5. So we're not sure if folks can use G5 overseas, or sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, but we do want to note that if you have a reference that is using an overseas server, they could encounter issues. So I would recommend reaching out to them as soon as possible and also having a backup in case there's any sort of issue where they're unable to access the form. Make sure that nowhere on your application that you're using any sort of special non-English or foreign characters of any form on your application or in your references. Basically, what happens when you use these is that G5 sort of translates them into like some sort of HTML language or something, and so it can make it a little trickier to read your application. And also be sure to remove all personally identifiable information or PII from all of your documents, including your student ID numbers, your birth date, your social security number, your address. Oftentimes, these are inadvertently included, and we don't need any of this information. And because our review process is a multi-step process and we're sending it to folks overseas and things like that, we really don't want any of this information. So please be sure to cross it out or redact it or whatever you can to make sure we're not receiving that. And a couple of other notes about your application. So be sure your CV includes the application's language status or proficiency. So we would recommend listing a proficiency level on your CV. The project description, application narrative, and bibliography must comply with the guidelines included in the application package. Applications that exceed page limits and do not comply with these guidelines will be rejected. So please make sure you're within the page limit. There's no appeal for this. So if you go over, that's not going to be good. Reference forms must be submitted by the referee noted by the applicant, so nobody else. Letters of affiliation and other host country supporting materials may be included in the application. These are not required documents, but can also demonstrate the applicant's experience and training in the proposed research language and area of study. And if you do include letters of affiliation, which is great, be sure that they are either in English or you provide a translation. We have really great peer reviewers, but they don't speak every language. So if you provide a letter of affiliation which is not in English, they might not be able to assess that resource. The IRB narrative is required if proposed research involves human subjects. The applicant must provide a narrative to the project director to include on the supplemental information form or the SF 424. And again, please be sure that you're removing all PII from your document material, from your materials. Okay, so we will provide some of this information in the description of this video because I'm aware that you cannot click on these links. But you can see on the webpage, this is some help with G5, and you can see if you go to g5.gov, if you look at the top of the screen, there are drop downs, so you can go to help, and then you can access user guides, and then you can access G5 for applicants. And there are several different guides there, help with your submission of your application. And I'll provide the information for the help desk at the end of the slideshow. Okay, so here's some more technical information about G5. This is for our project directors that are listening. This is how you register in G5 if you have not already, or if this is your first time. So project directors must register as applicant and not project director in their G5 profile. Faculty applicants must submit no to the question, are you registering as a fellowship Fulbright-Hays doctoral dissertation or research or faculty abroad director? So make sure you're selecting no to that prompt. FRA reference forms. So faculty applicants need to at least save a draft of the number 22 FRA form with their name, institution, country of research, and language. After that, the reference forms will appear. Make sure all applicants and referees hit submit to complete the application submission. The project director officially submits the institution of higher education and all eligible individual faculty applications, reference forms, IRB narratives, and other required forms using G5. So your project director is going to be key to applying for the FRA program. All right, so a couple of hints for G5. A fellow cannot submit their application after the project director has submitted the institution's application. So keep in mind that the deadline is April 23rd. So you're going to want to be in touch with your project director sooner rather than later. And make sure that your institution doesn't have any internal deadlines, which are maybe before April 23rd. You want to make sure that your project director has all of your materials, and then you're able to submit the institutional application and your application. If for some reason your institution's application is submitted before the deadline and you still have materials, be sure to reach out to the project director because they will have to assist with unsubmitting the application to make sure you get the rest of your materials in, if possible. And a reference cannot submit their recommendations if a fellow or project director has submitted their application. So again, make sure you're looking at the timeline and everything is lining up. The project director and the applicant must be associated with the same institution in G5. So you can't switch institutions in the middle of this process or even after this process. Your application will be affiliated with your current institution of higher education. So you must make sure that that is the case in G5. Okay, this next part, everything in this presentation is very important, but I think this next part is especially important for all of our applicants who are listening to this. So this is where we go through how we will review and score your applications. Okay, so this is the academic technical review, and these are the points that you would be eligible for as an applicant to the FRA. So first, we have a section devoted to the quality of proposed project, which is based off of 6 sub-criteria, which we'll talk more about, for a total of 70 points. Then we have qualifications of applicants based off 5 sub-criteria for a total of 30 points. Again, we'll go into more detail in just a couple minutes. So the subtotal for these 2 sections is 100 points. And then we have 3 competitive preference priorities, or CPPs, we call for short. And these are all additional points that you can get over the 100 points. And so you can see the first one is related to language, the second is related to your field of study, and the third is related to the type of institution that you're applying from. And you could be eligible to get up to 6 additional points through the CPPs. And when we review your application, the Department of Education uses peer reviewers who are world area specialists in foreign languages and area studies from higher education institutions, government agencies, and non-governmental organizations throughout the US who will review your applications. Peer reviewers determine technical scores in accordance with the competitive preference priorities, quality of proposed project, and the qualifications of the applicant. So let's look at the quality of proposed projects and the qualifications of applicants. Okay, so here's the sub-criteria by section. As I mentioned previously, 100 points are possible between these. So you can see for quality of proposed project, we have a section for your hypothesis, statement, research methods, literature review and originality, preliminary research, justification for overseas research, your dissemination plan, and strengthening foreign language and area studies and curricula. So all of these are important. If you don't include anything or parts of these, you will, or they're not very strong, you will miss some points. But I do want to note that the hypothesis is worth 20 points and the strengthening foreign language and area studies is worth 15 points. So those are 2 pretty substantial sections of this. And again, we'll go into more detail in just a moment. And then for qualifications of applicants, we have the applicant's academic record, the applicant's strength in teaching and research, the applicant's language proficiency, steps to overcome any anticipated language barriers, and the applicant's ability to conduct research overseas. So we'll go into more detail for all of these right now. But first, we'll go back to the competitive preference priorities, or the CPPs, that I previously noted. So these are kind of like bonus points that you can get on top of the 100 points. So the first one is language, second one is field, third is institution type. I'm just going to read the second one for fields because that is more substantial. So for that, it's a research project conducted in modern foreign languages and area studies with an academic focus on any of the following academic fields: science, including climate change, technology, engineering, including infrastructure studies, mathematics, computer science, education, comparative or international development, political science, public health, including epidemiology or economics. So we're actually going to go into more detail of these again in a couple slides, so you can see what these cover. Okay, so here is where I'm going to talk more about what we're looking for in each one of these sections. So pay close attention. This is the technical review for each section of the quality of the proposed project. So for your hypothesis statement and research question, so the research methodology describes the research design and rationale of the study. It should give the subjects and setting. It should identify the characteristics of participants of the study, how they were selected, and the setting of the study should be presented in detail. In your descriptions of apparatus and instrumentation, please give details of any tools or instruments to conduct the proposed research and the data collection procedures. Give a thorough description of all the steps involved in data collection. Timelines are helpful, either an outline or graphical representation. Efforts to protect the reliability of findings and the validity of inferences should be detailed. Please provide an analytical strategy to make sense of the observations and data analysis. And again, this section is worth 20 points, so it's a big bulk of points, and just make sure that you are really providing a lot of details about your hypothesis statement and your research questions. You don't want your peer reviewers to have any questions or feel lost when they're reading your proposal. So just provide as much detail as you can, given the guidelines you have for the application and how many pages it should be and things like that. So literature review and originality, this is worth 10 points. Here, the applicant demonstrates knowledge of the relevant literature in the field. The applicant has analyzed and articulated the potential impact of the research. The applicant demonstrates the relationship to the language and theoretical issues in the field and offers a critical retrospective examination of the fieldwork presented in the literature review that describes how the findings and results either build upon the literature review or provide new data for the field. The next section is preliminary research. This is worth 10 points. The applicant has indicated they have completed substantial preliminary research and demonstrates a clear plan for how they will conduct the research. So reviewers want to see what you've done and how that plays into your plan for your Faculty Research Abroad fellowship. Next one, justification for overseas research. This is worth 10 points. Here, the applicant provides clear justification for conducting the research overseas, and the applicant demonstrates appropriate connections in the host country. Affiliations are important here. The applicant plans to share the results of the research in progress with scholars and officials of the host country or countries and the American scholarly community, such as the publication record and history of successful travel research abroad. So you really want to be making that case for why this research needs to happen overseas and what sorts of connections you have, and then how you plan to share all of your findings. The next section is the dissemination plan, and this is updated from previous years. It used to be worth 10 points. Now it's worth 5 points. It's still very important because you don't want to miss 5 points. So make sure you're still fully addressing this one. So for dissemination plan, the applicant should have a clear plan for sharing preliminary and final findings of their research with stakeholders, academic community, host country, etc. A thoughtful plan for dissemination of results through research journals, publishing books, conferences, speaking engagements, etc. We will be looking for whether the applicant has a clear plan for sharing preliminary and final findings with stakeholders, the academic community, and colleagues in the host country. And lastly, strengthening foreign language and area studies curricula. This is worth 15 points, so this is a pretty big chunk of your points. And here the applicant should display a clear plan for how they will create new curricula in foreign language and area studies. The application and institutional support letter should address this in detail. So on to the next section of the technical review. So this is the qualification of the applicants. So here we have 30 points possible overall with several different sections. So now I'm going to go into each one of those sections. So applicant's academic record, this is worth 10 points, and the applicant should articulate a stellar record in teaching, research, and service and indicate a strong record of external grants. So we want to see any previous success that you've had in your teaching, research, anything like that. The second one is applicant strength in teaching and research. So this is also updated from previous years, so be sure to pay close attention to this. The applicant should clearly delineate how they have a great record in teaching. You can mention any awards or activities or things that you're involved with on your campus, and academic journals and articles. This should be identified by the application and in the supporting documents. The next one is the applicant's language proficiency. This is also updated from previous years. It's now worth 5 points. So here you should indicate in supporting documents and in your language evaluation a high level of proficiency of the languages used in your research. Your language should be related to the country that you're going to or the archival language being used. Even if the official language of the country is English, for the FRA, you must use a non-English world language or global language in your research to receive points in this section. The use of English only is not advised and no points will be awarded, which will be detrimental to any applicant's score. This section has also been changed so that if you are a native speaker of a language, you are now eligible to receive points for your language ability, and we will assess this using language evaluation and information provided in the application. Okay, so the next one is actually brand new this year, and this is steps to overcome any anticipated language barriers, and this is worth 5 points. And here we're looking to see what the applicant has done to increase their language proficiency relative to their proposed project. So applicants need to discuss how they have improved their language competency, and they should do this by highlighting it in the application. If you've taken additional language courses, you tutor in the language, do you use the language application like Duolingo or something similar? Do you work with students on their language proficiency? Reviewers want to see how you can overcome any kind of language barrier that you might encounter and how you'll be able to function in your research in the country and using that language abroad. Okay, the last one is the applicant's ability to conduct research overseas. This is worth 5 points. So the applicant should indicate previous successful travel and research abroad, so there's little question of their ability to conduct research overseas. Information will also be gleaned from the supporting documents, and they should also identify if the data that they're looking for is available in the country of research. And lastly, this is not on the screen, but I just want to say don't forget that there is an additional part of the application, and this is the institutional statement. So this statement should be prepared by an administrator of the institution of higher education who's knowledgeable about the applicant's abilities and the institution's language and area studies resources. It should describe how the project will contribute to the institution's plans for developing and strengthening its program in foreign language and area studies. And it should explain how the institution plans to utilize the faculty members' experience upon completion of the fellowship and must endorse the project on the basis of the candidate's professional competence, personal suitability, and availability to accept the award is offered. A completed statement must be submitted online by the referee to the institution's project director. Okay, so I already kind of went through the competitive preferences priorities a couple of times, but now I'll go through each of them. So the first one is language. So if you were using any languages other than French, German, or Spanish, this excludes English, you will receive 1 point. Number 2 is your field of study. I've already read this and it's on the screen, so I'm not going to read it again, but if your project falls into any of these categories, you would be eligible to receive 2 additional points. And lastly, our third competitive preference priority is your institution type. So if you are an applicant from an HBCU, an MSI, a tribal college, or a community college, you are eligible to receive 3 additional points on your application. And these institutions are all defined by the U.S. Department of Education, so we will double check them. Okay, so this next slide is our tentative review and award timeline. And I have a couple of things I want to point out about this. This is a very rough timeline. Our goal would be to get the awards to you as soon as possible. However, we don't know yet when that will be. So this is a conservative timeline, but we did want to give you a little bit of a guide of what to expect. So applications are currently open February 23rd to April 23rd. From late April to early May, the Department of Education will be conducting our eligibility checks. So we'll be reviewing to make sure everybody who's applied is actually eligible. Once we've determined that, from May to June roughly, we'll do our peer review process. So that's when we're working with folks, world area studies experts, to review your applications. And then from June to July, any applications that were successful in our peer review will be sent to our overseas Fulbright commissions and U.S. Embassy posts for their review for sensitivity and security and several different criteria to make sure that the projects are suitable and allowable in those countries. We'll receive that feedback, and then in August, we'll do our final determinations completed by the Department of Education. Late August, end of September, notifications of awards will be sent to the project directors, and then at the latest, all awards will be sent out at that time, and then you have to accept your award by September 30th. And then institutions would receive the funding October 1st, 2024. And then between October 1st and January 1st is when you would be attending orientation with the Department of Education. We would tell you more about your award. We would review some of what we've just spoken about related to budgets and travel, travel requirements, how you register your travel, how you get it approved, how you access your funds. All of that would happen from October to January. Then depending on your travel timeline, travel would happen sometime between January 1st and December 31st, 2025. Again, this is all a rough estimate, but we did want to provide general timeline so you're aware of what to expect. Okay, so current and past FRA fellows. So I mentioned that we had a hiatus for many years of the FRA, and then we did not have it. We did not host a competition in 2023, but we did have one in 2022. Okay, so these are some examples of past FRA projects, and these are actually just our 2022 fellows. You can see that we have the institution and the fellow, we have the academic discipline, the language, the research locations, and their topics. You can see one of the people did go to 3 different countries, the rest of them only went to 1. And you can see that the languages and the academic disciplines and the topics are all different and very interesting. So really there's a lot possible. As I mentioned previously, area studies is really broadly defined. So this award does see individuals from all sorts of backgrounds doing all sorts of interesting research. So I'm just going to leave this up on the screen for a moment so you can take a look. Okay, so we're going to move on. And we have 2 other fellows who provided a reflection on their experiences. This is Ignacio Corona from the Ohio State University. He was a 2022 fellow to Brazil. You can see his quote on the screen. He said, "The Fulbright-Hays FRA grant offered me the most exciting and rewarding research opportunity of my career. It allowed me to decisively advance my project on Nelson Rodrigues, the journalist and founder of modern Brazilian theater, in some of that country's largest libraries and archives, and whose results are taking the form of a book chapter, several conference papers, and a forthcoming undergraduate-graduate seminar. I also treasure the interviews with scholars and critics I had the privilege of interacting with, as well as those brief conversations with the ordinary citizens for whom the sole mention of the author I was studying put a smile of recognition on their face." So that's really nice to hear. We also heard from Joanna Peterson from the University of Kentucky. She conducted her research in Japan, and she said, "My Fulbright-Hays FRA Fellowship in Tokyo, Japan has allowed me to meet an exciting cohort of Japanese scholars of literature, gender studies, and visual culture, all of whom greatly expanded my way of thinking on many aspects of Japanese culture. Furthermore, these scholars have guided me in the research that will allow me to complete my upcoming book, Embodying Imperial Figures in Heian, Japan. In addition, during my time in Japan, NKH began broadcasting a historical drama TV series that reimagined the most famous Heian writer, Tale of Genji author Murasaki Shikibu. This overlapped with my research from the 11th and 13th centuries, showing me that the process of embodying figures from the past continues to shape cultural production today." And you can see Joanna there. Okay, so to wrap up today, I did want to share some application tips and resources. Okay, so tips for applying to the FRA. I'm going to go from the top and go down and up. So first, address all selection criteria in the order listed in the application packet. So we went through each criteria, and you'll want to make sure that you are clearly addressing each of those, because if you're not, or if the reviewers have any questions, you will have points deducted. So consider, maybe printing your application and color coding where you have addressed every selection criteria so you're not missing anything. When we talk about dissemination plan, make sure you are specifically addressing that in your application, for example. So contact references as soon as possible and prepare them. Explain the type of details to share about you in their letter. Ensure that they submit well ahead of the deadline. You'll want to have them emphasize anything in particular about your background or your research or your connections in that particular country. It will be different for each applicant, but you might want to let them know the sorts of things that you would want them to highlight based on what you know about the application and what we're looking for, especially in the qualifications of the applicant. Throughout your application, be clear and concise, and don't forget to adhere to the page number guidance. Assume those scoring your proposal know little about the topic. So we will be using world area experts, and so they probably will have some sort of connection or understanding of the region that you're going to, but you should still assume that they don't know that much, and make sure you're providing a detailed research plan addressing all aspects of your proposed project so there's no questions. Check carefully for grammatical errors. Again, consider maybe printing your documents out to review or have others review for you. Remember that your entire application counts, not just your project narrative. So ensure you address all parts of the application and the technical review criteria. Make sure you get all of your references in. Make sure if you have letters of affiliation, those are submitted on time. They're in English. Make sure all your language evaluations are available and things like that. Include sufficient details about your research goals and curricula development strategies. So consider using headers or other methods to help reviewers navigate your application with ease. Avoid professional jargon or acronyms. So make sure you're spelling out any acronyms at first so you're not assuming that the reviewers know what you're referring to. And lastly, consider having a friend read your proposal or a colleague well before the deadline. This can help with many of the things I've already mentioned, catching grammatical errors or typos, clarifying your project goals, spelling out any acronyms, and just making sure that everything is clear and that our reviewers will be able to understand your proposal. So additional resources, we have a frequently asked questions section on our webpage. Be sure to check that out if you still have questions. We also have the application instructions, which is a Word document. This is on the applicant section of the FRA webpage. Again, we'll link to this in the description of this video. Review all relevant parts of the instructions. The technical review form, which we went through during this presentation, is located on pages 55 through 57. So be sure to look that over as you're drafting your proposal and you're not missing anything. We're also on YouTube at Go Global Ed, and we have a video there where you can meet our 2022 FRA Fellows. I believe we have 5 or 6 of them who are showcasing their research and where they're going. So we'll link that in the description of this video as well. Okay, so I know that we just covered a lot of information, and so I wanted to also make you aware of our upcoming live question and answer session. We'll host a live question and answer session on Microsoft Teams to answer any specific applicant questions. This will happen on March 20th, 2024 from 3 to 4:15 p.m. in Washington, D.C. You can visit our website, which we'll have in the description of this video again, for a link to the login details. But there you'll be able to either chat us or you can unmute your mic and you can ask us a question. We'll do a couple of reminders of the application process in that webinar, but primarily we want to provide a space for questions for prospective FRA fellows as well as project directors. So you're all welcome to attend that session. And even if you can't attend that session, we are always available to answer questions. You can email us at fra@ed.gov. And if you prefer, we could potentially set up a phone call or a Teams meeting as well. A friendly reminder, the application deadline, April 23rd, 2024, 11:59 p.m. Washington, D.C. time. No late applications will be accepted. This is all of our contact information. My name is Amy Marion. You can contact me at fra@ed.gov. It's our website. There's our G5 technical assistance phone number, as well as the training module that I mentioned earlier. You can screen the QR code on the screen if you prefer to access our website on your cell phone. Or again, all of these links are in the description of this video. And that's all. So I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you to all of our project directors. Thank you to all of our prospective FRA fellows for joining. I'd like to wish you all good luck on your applications. Don't be afraid to reach out with any questions. And also don't forget, applications are due April 23rd, 2024, 11:59 Washington, D.C. time. Make sure you tune into our Q&A on March 20th. And again, good luck and thank you again.